guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to be looking at the Deadline article, going over a few things in it. Basically, it telling us what a lot of us have known for a long time, what a lot of us have been saying for a long time. I don't think there's anything in here that for a lot of us is utterly shocking. Basically, they confirm that what was conceived as a plan to Marvelize the franchise did not translate into a big bang. Instead, the partnership died with a whimper, with Disney not even putting out a statement to mark its passing. I agree. Everyone wanted to be like Marvel. Even DC couldn't manage to be like Marvel, and you'd think they'd have the easiest time of it. No one has managed to quite pull off what Marvel pulled off with its world building. But everybody wanted to, especially around 2021, 2022. Right in the middle of the streaming wars as well, when everybody was vying to be the top streaming network. Everybody was spending a ludicrous amount of money on stuff that was never going to pay for itself. Also around those times when theatrical movies were releasing day one also on the streaming services and losing a buttload of money, which I said at the time was a stupid idea. It says, Deadline has spoken with multiple sources in Doctor Who's orbit who say that Disney fell apart for a variety of reasons, including concerns over show's failure to break out from the established fan base and its big-ticket budget. Others suspect that fears of woke backlash may be a factor. I hate that word woke. It's such a blanket statement. It really just means whatever anyone using it needs it to mean at the time. I hate that phrase, or that term. It was pretty apparent from early on that this wasn't for the long term, says a former Disney executive. Everyone got the impression that it wasn't doing what it needed to do to be sustained. Another person close to Doctor Who adds, the writing has been on the wall for ages. There's been a complete lack of enthusiasm over at Disney. I think Disney has wanted out since, at the very least, the end of Season 1. Because the Season 1 numbers were not good. Which is what we've been saying for a long time. I know some of the YouTubers have tried to justify it, and, well, times are different, and rating numbers are different, and you can't judge things the way they used to be. Meanwhile, wasn't there a show on the BBC recently that just did like 12.9 million views? And then they had another one a few months ago that got like 9 or 10 million. It was like the series finale or something. Apparently, it can still be done. I get that's not the norm anymore, but apparently it can be done. And Doctor Who, a British institution, you would think could at least manage more than an average of 3.8 million, which Shooty got was final season. Got an average of 3.8 million. I do think, especially with Empire of Death being just so lambasted, I don't know anyone who thinks that's a good season finale. Even people who like the era seem to admit that it wasn't a very good finale. Literally, other than them bringing Gabriel Wolf back, which that part was cool. I love Gabriel Wolf. He's awesome. Other than that, Empire of Death, dreadful, dreadful, dreadful. Ruining Sutekh, damaging Pyramids of Mars, arguably, and kind of taking away, at least in part, the Fourth Doctor's victory in that story, which is one of the greatest endings in a Doctor Who story ever. You do not mess with Pyramids of Mars. Top 10 Doctor Who. So I agree that Disney saw this. They saw the numbers. They saw the reaction to the two-part finale, and they realized, oh dear, what have we gotten ourselves into? That's what I think. It says, announced in October of 2022, Disney's agreement to co-produce Doctor Who was inked at the height of the streaming wars, just weeks before Bob Iger walked back into the building and started scaling back spending. That's why they brought Bob Iger back. They realized, we're hemorrhaging money. We need to scale that back, and he started cutting out unnecessary stuff. So you definitely want to consider cutting out, the show that's not even your own IP that you're paying that much money for. It says here, it was hailed at the time as unprecedented pact, bringing together two giants of entertainment, but the ex-Disney insider said they soon detected regret at spending so much money on Doctor Who. The show's budget was between $6 million, which is that's pounds, by the way, $8.5 million in US dollars. 6 million and 8 million pounds, we understand, putting the value of the deal as much as 168 million pounds, which would be more in US dollars. That's some money. The former Mouse House employee notes a lack of marketing firepower behind the brand, nowhere near the might of Marvel or Star Wars, creating something of a chicken and egg scenario where it became harder for Doctor Who to cut through to an American audience. I do remember some marketing for season 1 and eventually getting marketing for season 2, although it came way, way later, close to when it was premiering. Ratings flop. Doctor Who's performance has been far from stellar in the U.S. This year's season failed to register in the Nielsen and the Luminate streaming charts. Meanwhile, the Entertainment Strategy Guide blog branded Doctor Who's debut on Disney as one of the flops of 2024. Yes. There was also a serious lack of awards buzz around the series, which only managed one Primetime Emmy nomination for Outstanding Choreography. I think that was for the musical in Devil's Chord. And Devil's Chord is not a bad episode. I actually enjoy that episode. The ending's really weird. On the BBC, Doctor Who has seen an alarming drop-off in viewing figures. Season 15 averaged 3.8 million viewers, which is the lowest ever, I believe, for the show. This represents a decline of 1 million over the previous season, and both of his were down over Judy Gatwa's concluding season, Flux, which was watched by an average of 5.2 million, a period that itself is not considered to be vintage Doctor Who. The ratings were not up to much, someone involved with the series ruefully acknowledges. Yes, you know what? The article's like, it's because the ratings were bad. How many of us here have been saying for a while now, the ratings were not good? It's not exactly a startling revelation. See, 2024 Gatwa's first season broke the record, having some of the lowest episodes in viewing figures the show has ever had. Then 2025 happened, his second season, and it broke that record again. Even classic Doctor Who never had low numbers that low. They have beaten Battlefield Episode 1's record. And at least it had the excuse of being up against Coronation Street, which was a juggernaut at the time. BBC drama boss Lindsay Salt thanked Disney, yada. It says, sources tell us that the BBC and Disney initially planned to make a statement about Doctor Who's future after the premiere of the spin-off series The War Between the Land and the Sea, but Disney moved the announcement up. I think that's interesting that Disney moved the announcement up. Not the BBC, Disney. That's fascinating. They've clearly sat down and made a final decision in the past week or so, but it's been on the cards for a long time, says Tony Jordan, who runs the Doctor Who Appreciation Society. Jordan says Whovians believe Gatwa's seasons have been patchy. There were some strong episodes in both, but the two-part finales were not particularly well regarded. A lack of episodes made it difficult for audiences to get to know Ncuti and his companions to really develop their storylines. His experience felt somewhat fraught. He left after 2 seasons and later blamed burnout, with a 33-year-old saying he was getting old and my body is tired. What? You're 33 years old. You're old. Your knees, your body. What? Meanwhile, William Hartnell, who was in his late 50s, and let's be honest, William Hartnell was a hard late 50s because he looks a lot older in his 50s. And they had to practically drag him out to get him to leave. He wanted to stay. And you're burned out at 33. Somebody get Ncuti Gatwa a walker. Somebody get him some Metamucil. Get him some insulin or something. That poor old man. Let's get him sent off to the retirement home so he can lay back and relax. That poor old man. A Doctor Who source says the show suffered because Gatwa never fully embraced the role. I agree. There is more to the role than performing. You have to be an ambassador for the brand and embrace being that generation's Doctor. Matt Smith, David Tennant fully understood the responsibility it carried. Peter Capaldi, I believe, understood that as well. And if Jodie Whittaker didn't understand it at the beginning of her tenure, by the end of her tenure and currently, I do think she understands that, because I do think she tries to still be an ambassador for the brand. I'll give her that. Ncuti Gatwa never seemed to embrace that. I know there are some people trying to defend him on Twitter about it. I disagree. Ncuti Gatwa was the one actor that to me never seemed to really love playing the Doctor. Most actors who play the Doctor love playing the Doctor. I have never gotten that impression for Ncuti Gatwa. I think it was just a career move for him, a way to try to improve his career, he thought. He never seemed to really embrace the role to me, personally, as someone who has seen literally every episode of the show. The missing episodes via, telesnap, reconstruction, or animation, but literally every episode of the show, I don't ever feel like he fully embraced the role. Another well-placed industry source says Doctor Who became far too woke for Trump's USA, and this was a factor in Disney's mind when it came to renewals. Again, I hate the word woke. America is definitely in a different place politically than it was in 2021 and 2022 when all this was being finalized. with the left was in full swing control of the government, with no real checks on what they were doing. Now, and again, keeping in mind, I'm not someone that identifies completely with either side. I have some opinions that lean left. I have some opinions that lean right. I have this weird thing I do where I decide how I feel on an issue depending on that particular issue. Seems the common sense solution to me. And now in 2025, you have a presidency that's controlled by the right, a Senate that's controlled by the right, and a House that's controlled by the right. And again, you'd have some people argue that there's no real checks on that either. So the mentality is very different. I think you're seeing a lot of the DEI practices on hiring based just on race or gender being pushed out, and a return to people being hired more on merit, which, to be fair, is something I agree with. I mean, you still need a diverse workplace, but you should hire people based on merit with that in there. I agree with that. But it is definitely a different environment now. Whether it's better, whether it's worse, is up to your own subjective opinion. But it is definitely different. So I could see there being some basis in this. Now, I don't think Doctor Who died because of Trump. That's nonsense, but somebody will say it. But I do think that that could affect this very leftist era of the show. Disney is incredibly unlikely to ever admit politics were a factor in Doctor Who. It's probably true. Disney's post-Disney reset. Season 15 concluded on an ambiguous note with Gatwa regenerating into Billy Piper. Jordan speculates this will be temporary and Davis will use the just announced 2026 Christmas special to tie up loose ends. I agree. I think this will just be a one-off, whatever they end up having Billy do. Jordan thinks fresh blood might be required. Nothing says that Russell will be showrunner in 2027. It might be time for a new showrunner to take it forward. I agree. I think Russell will do the Christmas special, which in and of itself is a double-edged sword. Are we going to get good Russell or more current day Russell? It's a double-edged sword. The Christmas special could go either way, or it could be somewhere in the middle, doing some things I like, some things I don't. And then I think there's a good chance he leaves. I don't know about Banville Studios leaving, but there's a good chance he leaves. And then they decide to bring in a new showrunner, which would, I think, be a good idea. Depending on what showrunner they bring in. I would love Straczynski. J. Michael Straczynski would be perfect. I don't care that he's not British. I think he would be perfect. If Sense8, from what I hear about it, or Babylon 5, which is amazing, is anything to go by, he would be phenomenal, I think, with Doctor Who. Committing to a Christmas special that's 15 months away buys the BBC time to ponder how to push on now that it has lost a lot of its budget. It can be reset and buys everyone time to make decisions, was how it was characterized by someone close to the series. I agree. I think that this gives them time to figure out what they want to do, how to move forward. It's even in classic Doctor Who, there were times when Doctor Who reinvented itself. When the show in season 6 was in danger of cancellation, we got the Pertwee era, which was a great way to save the budget by, of course, exiling him to Earth. And the Pertwee era, let's be honest, is one of the best eras of the show, honestly. It worked. So you could definitely do a rethink, especially now that you're going to have less of a budget. It says here, a former Disney executive reckons the BBC will be able to spend 2.5 to 3 million pounds per episode, which is a lot less than 6 to 8. But you could scale that back and make that work. Just have, if you have an 8-episode season, have like 3 episodes that are really a high budget. Maybe your season opener, your season finale, maybe 1 episode in there somewhere, and then you have some more scaled back episodes set on modern day Earth or in the past. And we know the BBC is really good at doing historical episodes. They've got the cost, they've got that down. You know, other things to keep costs down. You know, kind of like season 17 of Classic Who, where you focus your budget on maybe 2 or 3 good stories, and then the rest you kind of scale back a little bit. Again, going back to the money, I don't mind Doctor Who scaling back the money. I think a lot of people, especially classic fans, would even argue that Doctor Who works better on a lower budget. That's part of its DNA, especially classic fans would argue, is the fact it doesn't look like it had the best budget in the world. The fact it was made on that shoestring budget, made the people working on it really have to work for it. And they pulled off some amazing things. The jungle set in Planet of Evil, hello. That wonderful opening shot for Trial of a Time Lord with the space station. And pulled off some really good enemies. The Daleks themselves. Having a low budget, a shoestring budget even for the classic series, made them have to get inventive. And you know that in that situation, your storyline has to nail it. That's why you have people like Bob Holmes. Absolutely Bob Holmes. So what can they do? First off, again, lean into the fact that Doctor Who can work with a lower budget. That's just inherently part of the show. It doesn't have to look like even the Jodie Whittaker era, the Shooty Gatwa era. Doctor Who doesn't have to look like that. It doesn't have to look like it doesn't have to have any of that like the Mandalorian. None of that. You can have it look scaled back and make it work. Doctor Who, part of what makes it work and part of its key DNA is the kind of low budget nature of it. And you don't have to take my word for it. I can give you someone else who has that exact same opinion. Let's see what they have to say.
What do you call them by that, Peter?
Because the Doctor Who is much loved because it's got a slightly amateurish quality about it, and that's what makes it endearing. If you made it perfect, and you tried to make it like a Star Trek, I don't think it would have that character. Doctor Who's got a lot of affection, it's got a lot of love in it. And I think that's what makes it what it is. And I think the fact that you might occasionally have a fleeting glimpse of a black sand shoe under a Dalek going like that endears the public to it.
And there it is. And I think, of course, if you're a Doctor Who fan, and you should know who that was. If you don't know who that was, then I question whether you're really a Doctor Who fan. John's right, though. John says it perfectly. And so Doctor Who doesn't need a big budget. Doctor Who needs good writing. Those stories from classic Doctor Who that are regarded as truly great stories, it's because of the writing, far more so than it is the special effects. Pyramids of Mars isn't remembered as a good story because it has Star Wars level special effects. It doesn't. It's remembered as a good story because it's written incredibly well, because it's basically a page one rewrite by the GOAT, Bob Holmes, greatest writer the show ever had. But even some of the modern series, some of the best stories are the ones with lower budget. Look at Blink. Great story. Gridlock. I don't know what the budget for Gridlock is. It looks pretty nice. It's not, special effects aren't like modern day, but I love Gridlock. Dalek doesn't have the highest budget in the world, but it's a great story because it's shot well and it's written well. Rob Sherman knew exactly what he was doing with that story. Even in the modern series, as the article mentioned, I think I skimmed over it, but it was some of the lower budget episodes that actually were the most popular, like 73 Yards, which is a great episode, with a much lower budget than some of the other episodes. Not to say a higher budget episode can't be good. I like Dot and Bubble a lot. Probably my favorite episode of the Gatwa era easily, of the RTD2 era. I love Dot and Bubble a lot. But I think they need to focus on just reining it back in. You don't need an £8 million budget when you can do it with $2 million with good writing. I think one of the things you should do when you bring in a new showrunner is also bring in Philip Hinchcliffe. I talked about this recently, I think, in my video about Pete McTighe. Philip Hinchcliffe, it was the producer of Doctor Who during one of its most successful eras. What some people might argue is its most successful era. Part of that, of course, being due to Bob Holmes being the script editor, but part of that being due to, of course, Philip Hinchcliffe and how well those two work together, much like Barry Letts and Terrence Dicks, another high mark in Doctor Who history. Philip Hinchcliffe is still around. He is still involved with Doctor Who. He still does stuff to help the audios. He still does a lot of stuff for the collection box sets. He's all over the season 13 box set. He still loves the franchise. To bring in Philip Hinchcliffe in an advisory role or a consultant would be a fantastic idea. One, it would be great to get his thoughts, to get his opinions, learn what made his era work, how you could try to repeat that success. And then, imagine how the fans would feel if you announced we're bringing in Philip Hinchcliffe in an advisory role. There's a lot of us who would at least have hope. We would be like, maybe there's a chance. Maybe. Now, you don't do that just for the sake of doing that, just so you can get it out there and get us, pumped up about it. You actually do want to use his knowledge and his advice. And I'm not saying you have to make him the showrunner or even like one of two showrunners, but to literally bring him in an advisory role, in a consulting role, and legitimately listen to his input, get his advice, use his advice, put it into action. I think that would help. I would love to see that. That would give me hope. And he's still around. He's still invested in Doctor Who. He still cares for the program. I think he takes a lot of pride that his era is held in such high regard. Especially if you want to do a horror story in Doctor Who, bring in Philip Hinchcliffe. He knows a thing or two about it. So I would like to see that. But yeah, most of this has just been stuff we already knew. Here's what I've been telling people. I did a video a little while back. And basically what I talked about was that the show wasn't doing well, and that the proof of it was how all of the side stuff was disappearing. Back when they first announced Doctor Who coming back, and when they first brought Doctor Who back, we had all this supplementary stuff we had going on. We had colorization of 60s stories, more omnibus edition colorizations. We had Tales of the TARDIS going on. We still had the animations. All of that's kind of dried up. Hopefully for getting more animations, but we've had no news on that. But we have had no announcements on more colorizations. We got the Daleks, we got the War Games, no news. People involved have actively said they have not been commissioned to do anymore. Tales of the TARDIS, dried up and gone. The fact that all of that stuff stopped happening, the fact that some of the stories that have disappeared off the iPlayer haven't been brought back, like Terror of the Zygon and Seeds of Doom. I think they've known since the end of season 1 that Disney wanted out, that they weren't going to get a renewal, and that Disney was just fulfilling their contract because they legally have to. Season 2 didn't help matters because Season 2 did even worse numbers and had an arguably even worse finale. It really is hard to pick between those two finales. Which one's just the worst garbage. And so I've argued that for a long time the show wasn't doing well. The numbers were bad. I know what people try to tell you. They try to defend it and come up with excuses. The numbers are bad. And here's the proof. If the numbers were good, Disney would still be here. If the numbers were doing well and the show was doing gangbusters and it was in the public awareness, if Doctor Who was where it was in 2013, Disney would be on that in a hot minute. They'd be like, Season 3, Season 4, 5, let's get on that. They're not, because it's not doing well. It's so obvious. It's something so many of us have known for so long. Tales of the TARDIS, done. Colorizations of old stories, done. Animations, who knows? At least we're still getting the box sets, but you wonder about the budget of the box sets considering all the problems with the season 13 box set. While the extras are good, the AI is problematic in some of the stories. So one has to wonder. When it's fairly obvious, though, that Disney has wanted out for a while. And none of this, I think, surprises a lot of us. It's sad, and it's neat that they want to push forward with the brand, but it doesn't surprise me. I wondered if the show was going to go on hiatus, but at this point, as others have said, long-running franchises don't sit in mothballs anymore. They certainly don't die anymore. They drag the corpses out and drag them and parade them in front of everybody like puppets. They've done it with Star Trek. They've done it with Star Wars. And part of me is kind of glad we never got the Babylon 5 remake. I'd like to think JMS could have done good by it, but part of me is glad we never got it. As much as part of me would love to see it. And then we've seen Doctor Who, which I think for a lot of people who grew up with classic Doctor Who, especially, Doctor Who just doesn't feel like Doctor Who anymore. That's not to say there aren't good episodes. I think every season series of Doctor Who has a good episode. Even Series 11, Flux have good episodes while still being bad seasons. And even Ncuti Gatwa's era, which is a low point for the show, still has some good episodes in each one. Even if they're just B tier good, not S tier good. Although Dot and Bubble is S tier good for me. But yeah, they're not going to just let the show die. Doctor Who, I think, is one of their biggest exports. They make a lot of money on selling it internationally. They're going to keep it out however they can to keep it in the public awareness so they can make money. Because it's all about money. It's all about the money now. It's all about the money. They want to continue to sell you the box sets. They want to continue to sell you the steelbooks, the animations, everything. So they're going to keep parading Doctor Who out as long as they can. Now, hopefully, they'll get in a showrunner that can do something with it. Hopefully not a showrunner that just grew up with the modern series, because that scares the hell out of me if they think that's what Doctor Who is supposed to be, and only that. That's terrifying. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm not surprised that they're not letting it go, because it's a moneymaker. And that's just how it is. These shows don't get to fade. These franchises don't get to fade quietly into the night anymore. Or in Indiana Jones' case, they don't get to literally walk away in the sunset. You know, walk off in the sunset. They don't get to do that anymore. Ride off in the sunset, like Indiana Jones literally got to do in The Last Crusade. We don't get that anymore. They have to drag it out and just beat its dead corpse like a piñata, basically, to see what all goodies are still in there. So none of this surprises me. None of this. But I'm curious to see what we'll get. They have a year and a half to figure this out. Really longer, depending on when they'll try to do the next season, series, whatever they're going to call it. And we'll see what kind of reset they do. So I want to know what you think of this video. Comment down below. And the current state of Doctor Who. Comment down below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button as well. I also have a link to the Patreon down there that does help me keep the bills paid, the new mortgage paid, all that fun stuff. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons: Colin Coney, Unknown289, Finn Perkins, and Androzani Major. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. It does make a difference. Even a lot of my lower and middle tier patrons have been with me for a long time, so I really appreciate them. I also have my P.O. box down there if there's anything you'd like to send me to look at and review. I love getting these standard edition sets. Most of these have come from subscribers, most of them from Simon, let's be honest. And I know Simon has season 22 coming for me soon, which I really appreciate. And then I also have a link to the Amazon wish list down there and a link to the Amazon UK wish list down there as well. Check those out. Most importantly, thank you for watching.